Hi, everybody, and welcome back to our community conversation. Back in April, you might have remembered that we started a conversation with Housing Opportunities, and we are here to continue that talk about what we're doing here in the community and some questions that we didn't get answered. I'm going to hand it over to Mr. Bill Durnell to go ahead and finish up our conversation here.
Well, thank you, Lisa, and hopefully not finish up, really. I want to be part of this.
Continue.
For a long time, because the work you guys do is very important to a lot of people, and I'm just happy to be part of it. Thank you. So Jordan, we talked, as Lisa said, in early April. At that time, we were just a couple of weeks or maybe a month into the COVID-19 impacts locally, I think. And, my family business, Roots Cafe, had just shut down, I think, 2 weeks prior. So we were trying to figure out what the world looked like at that time, and there was a lot of uncertainty. I asked you then how it impacted both the operations of HO as well as the client base that you serve. And at that time, if I recall, you had gone remote in terms of your work relationships, and I think you had closed the resource center at the main office there. So what's happened in the past 2 months? How have things developed both from operationally and client side?
It's crazy. I think it's only been 2 months. It feels like a lot longer than that for sure. But yeah, we're still doing the same setup. So our staff are still working remote and serving our clients that way. Mm-hmm. And again, the resource center is still closed for now, and it probably will be, probably through the end of July. And then if things are starting to, again, look better in that way, and we're able to reopen a little more safely, we'll examine that at that time. But other than that, we're still able to, fully serve our clients, over the phone, and doing some drop-offs and stuff like that as well. I've been really proud of the fact that we've been able to still house new clients in our shelter, and in the community as well. We had a couple people who were able to exit other housing options to better things. So we were able to put people into, permanent housing solutions right here in the community, during a global pandemic. So I've been really proud of our staff that we're still able to maintain that high quality of service. It's really important to us, and still meet people's needs that don't go away during this time for sure.
Right. Certainly not. Probably increase. In terms of the demand for affordable housing or assistance with finding housing, we talked about unemployment and the rise and the impact that was going to have on people in the medium to long term. Again, back in early April, you hadn't really seen that spike yet. Is there any signs that a spike is coming?
Yeah, we think so. I think definitely since mid-May, through now, and I think we'll see that continue. Is we're starting to get increased call volume and inquiries about the need for housing. Mm-hmm. Most of it's focused around the fact that people aren't able to pay their rent during this time.
Right.
Worried about what's going to happen, come July 1st when the eviction moratorium gets lifted. And so people are starting to be proactive and saying, hey, I'm going to need a place to live, or do you have the ability to help us out with our back rent? So we're trying to manage that call volume increase and give people good solid information. Because we don't have an answer right now for a lot of those questions, which is not something that generally we experience. So we're able to help people who might currently be in need of housing. But we're not quite there yet in terms of being able to serve the need for people who are, who owe back rent and stuff like that as well. We hope that's coming pretty soon, but we're just not quite there yet.
Mm-hmm. Good. How closely do you work with the Center Township trustee on things like that?
Yeah, pretty closely. We've been on a couple different phone calls recently with Jesse Harper, the Center Township trustee. And I think we're waiting on some state funding to kick in, and we think it's going to be around July 1st to, for rental assistance to help people who owe that back rent. And so really working with both the Center Township trustee and all the trustees that we see in Porter and LaPorte County to make sure clients here in Porter County and in LaPorte have access to that state funding. The state is going to receive around $14 million to fill that need in particular, and we will make sure we're getting people to that resource as quickly as possible, so we don't see an increase in homeless numbers. That's our main goal, is to keep people housed, where they're at now, as hopefully they're starting to go back to work and things are starting to normalize a little bit. And then we can focus more of our resources on those folks whose jobs were eliminated, or who were couch surfing during this time because their family saw those health issues they might have. Because we definitely see the increased need for homelessness coming here in the next 3 to 6 months, I think, as well.
Sure. Last question on the sort of direct impacts of COVID. You guys are involved in or recently opened an isolation shelter. Is that correct? Talk about how that works.
Yeah, it was a big undertaking, but the state asked us to open an isolation shelter for our region, and we were able to kind of step up and meet that need for the community. So it is here at a site in Valparaiso. We have 10 rooms to serve people who are both experiencing homelessness in some way and then have a COVID-related issue. So maybe they tested positive and they are being released from the hospital, but they don't have a place to go quarantine or self-isolate. Maybe they were exposed to someone who had COVID. They're asymptomatic. They just need a place to, again, self-isolate and quarantine and get tested. So we're able to meet that need, at that site and have 24-hour staff supervision there. We're working with a host of community partners, which has been really great to see. From Porter County Community Foundation and United Way of Porter County supplying PPE for us and our staff there. Both HealthLink and Porter Stark Services are providing telehealth services on site. So if someone's having a mental health issue or a primary care issue, we can immediately connect them to someone so they can talk face to face. And if they need other services, we can get them off site for that as well. The VNA and Pines Village are coordinating Meals on Wheels food for our clients there, because it is an isolation shelter. So once someone goes into their room, they're not coming out until they're medically cleared to do so.
Right.
So it's important we can meet all their needs on site in the best way possible. And then Epic Limo is providing transportation for us. So we need to be able to securely get people from where they're at to the site and then back. And so they really stepped up and helped us out with that aspect, which is one of the more challenging aspects when you're serving, multi-county region, especially.
Okay.
And we'll be open, definitely through the end of July, and we're funded through the end of September for that. So, we'll be able to stay around if the need's still there and meet that community need for sure.
Okay. Well, thank you for sharing that and for doing that. I think it'll be interesting to see how the disease progresses in terms of community spread. We've locally, my own perspective is that we've fared pretty well. Actually, I think in Center Township, if I recall yesterday's numbers, there have been 7 deaths related to COVID, each of which is obviously tragic, but 7 is a pretty small number here. So hopefully that will continue. And I don't know, it seems to be seasonal in some ways, or we're being pretty good at our social distancing because the numbers are coming down.
We've been happy too. I think in the isolation shelter, we've served 10 people so far, and all of them have tested negative and been able to get into alternative housing. It's been really great to have the testing site through the state here in Valparaiso. Usually we can do same day testing for folks. And you only have to isolate them for 4 or 5 days versus, the full 2 weeks or longer.
Yep.
That's a tough sell for anyone to be cooped up by themselves for 2 weeks. So we've been happy to not have that, any outbreak or anything in the homeless population locally, which is, kind of our biggest concern, I think.
Okay, great. All right, well, we had a couple of questions from the last conversations that we didn't have time to get to, so I want to turn to those. Before I do, I want to put Lisa on the spot here a little bit. Lisa, could you tell people where they can send their questions in case we have another one of these conversations in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. Feel free to follow us on Facebook, and you can message any questions to us directly through Facebook Messenger, or also email me, and I am lfranco@hoi.help, and we'll make sure when we post this conversation that information is available as well for people to submit questions to.
Great. Thank you, Lisa. All right, so we have a question from Marek. Marek is a young guy I know. I met a couple of years ago. He's, I believe, the current president of the Bonta Neighborhood Association. And Mark's question is, knowing the disproportionate rates that the LGBTQ youth makeup of the population experiencing homelessness, how can we best support them here in Northwest Indiana?
Yeah, that's a great question and a tough one to answer, unfortunately. I think, there's a couple things we can do. The couple of things we do now, and then there's a couple things that I'd like to see happen in the future. So that is the fastest growing subset of homelessness in the country right now. So that population is not the largest group, but it's the fastest growing over the last several years. There's a variety of factors around why that is, but we've always been proud of the fact that Housing Opportunities is the only shelter in Northwest Indiana that serves any gender, family type, or anything like that. So we serve both single men, single women, and families of any type. So most other shelters serve just kind of one subset of the population. But we're able to serve, all family types because we recognize they come on all shapes and sizes. So we're really proud of that fact. But the one group that we're not able to serve is youth who are on their own. So you have to be at least 18 to enter most homeless shelters, and the reason for that is youth homeless shelters need special protections in place for that group. The same thing is if you can't just open a daycare, you have to be licensed and certified to do that. The same thing applies to youth shelters as well. And there's not many across the state, which is the unfortunate news. So there is one in Lake County that serves youth homeless population. There is one being built currently in Elkhart County, which is to our east, about an hour and a half away, and one in Fort Wayne, and that's the entire northern half of the state. That's the amount of shelter beds we have for that population. And there's some in southern Indiana, but it's definitely it's a tough market to work with, I think, for a lot of reasons. And then it's there's a lot of scarcity around available beds and service providers for that. So we are lucky enough to have a site here in Lake County, not too far away, but it's definitely not enough to meet the demand for that population. So I think it's a long-term look for our region to have some increased capacity around that, because again, it is the fastest growing population of homeless folks right now.
Okay. All right, our next question comes from Matthew. Matthew's another guy I know here. He won the first Valpo Next pitch competition for his idea to create a civic engagement platform online. Matthew says, or asks, do you think the amount of overburdened households is growing, plateauing, or shrinking in the next 5 years in our service area? And what resources can help these families get through?
Yeah, that's a really timely question right now. So the answer was definitely yes before coronavirus broke out, but even more so now. I think that we're just going to see just an exponential increase over kind of the normal growth rate there. I think that's the trend that's been for the last, I don't know how long, probably the last decade. We've seen that trend increase, and now I think it's just going to increase even further. I think we're gonna see jobs be completely eliminated because businesses are closing permanently for whatever reason. And then I think to me it always goes around the need you need affordable places for people to live, and you need jobs that pay an affordable wage to folks. So I think that's the areas where the most good can do for people, and the area we focus on the most is affordable housing. So I think that's where we're looking to, over the next 5 years and our strategic planning as well, is to try and meet that demand as much as possible, because it's definitely increasing, from year to year for sure.
All right, 2020 is an election year. both at the presidential level, but also at state houses and even in the county. Our primary election was postponed from May to next Tuesday. I don't know when this will be released, but Tuesday, June 2nd is the Indiana primary. I'm not asking for your opinion on any particular candidate, obviously, but do you have any issues before the state legislature that would impact how you run your business?
Yeah, I think affordable housing, I think across the country is a hot topic at both the local, state, and national level. And Indiana has been, I'll say, surprisingly progressive on the affordable housing front at the state level. So they passed for the first time ever a couple of years ago the first state-funded housing project. It's called Housing First, and it takes people who have disabilities or mental illness and are in a housing crisis and allows us to house them in the community with some services over a 2-year period. So it's a really progressive look for Indiana, I think, in trying to address the housing crisis in that way. And I think there's going to be an increased need again with COVID issues happening right now for increased funding for affordable housing projects. And again, we're very fortunate in the state to work with the State Housing Authority on a regular basis, and they're also kind of in that same vein, looking at the most creative ways to provide affordable housing and utilize their funding, whether that's through the single-family home project we talked about last month in Michigan City, or our Beverly Apartments, which is opening up here soon, which I think we'll touch on in just a second. So I think that's what I'm looking for from the state legislature, and also from a selfish perspective, my wife's also an educator. So I think, looking at, teacher pay and funding schools and in a much more robust way is important to me as for our family and our communities.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. I don't know if we touched on this last time. I think we just barely did, but one thing that we still don't have a good way to talk about across the community is just what is affordable housing? What does it mean? Some people say every house is affordable to somebody. So how do you think about that term? Is it a lightning rod, or is it the right terminology? And then, what are the definitions and what's the best way to approach this when we talk about, increasing the housing, the diversity of our housing stock?
Sure. Yeah, I think that's, a really unique conversation, in that we use the term affordable housing to describe what we do, because that's kind of like what the industry uses to describe it. So whether you're talking to the federal or state government, or different housing providers across the country, they're using the term affordable housing for a certain subset of the population. So generally, it's people at 80% of area median income for your area. And so that'd be someone probably in Porter County who makes $35,000 or less. That's for a single person. So that's the term affordable housing. So housing for that subset of the population. And then
from that 80% of median income level, you do another percentage to determine how much of their income should or
right
go towards housing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where the term affordable housing comes from our perspective. While we're definitely concerned about housing that's affordable for all income levels, our organization is focused on the lowest income levels in our communities that we serve. And so that's why we kind of focus on that piece of it. And I think, language is really important in how we discuss issues. And, whatever term you use to talk about the housing that you're looking at for low income or middle income or whatever the case is, to me, that the crux of it is that people are going to, want to use a different term because it always gets associated with, kind of negative aspects to what that is. Whether you're talking about, Section 8 or HUD housing or something like that, I think there's always going to be, pushback on whatever term you use from people who, from the NIMBY folks who don't want to see that type of housing in their neighborhood. So I think it's, about using terms that are relatable across the board and are really focusing on what you're talking about. The term workforce housing is a new popular term, I think, for kind of that income level right above affordable housing.
Mhm.
So it's that they got middle income folks who are working, usually associated with people who are working in manufacturing and stuff like that.
Mhm.
Um, and then again, I think that's what our single family home project in Michigan City is kind of focused on, that more workforce housing area. But whatever term you use, I think it's important just to define what you're trying to address through that issue, I think.
Yeah. And I've talked before about this, not on camera necessarily, but just the way in which integrating all levels of income housing into a particular neighborhood, there's benefits to that. Obviously, some people want to live in gated communities of a common or similar type, and they're free to do that. But the neighborhoods that I love the most personally are the ones where there's a wide selection and wide variety of housing types. Some of the best low-income housing I've seen are ones that from the outside you can't tell are multifamily or are are low income. So just thoughts about design and zoning again always come to fore when we're talking about this topic.
Yeah, I think quality is always important, whether you're talking about high-end housing or affordable housing. And to us, it's one of the most important things we can bring to a community is we want our housing to look great. We want it to blend in with neighborhoods that we're working in, and we want to have that same mentality of when people walk down the street, they can't single out that, hey, that's a housing opportunities building, or that's a commercial building that's market rate or something too. We want to make sure that we are blending into those neighborhoods and being good neighbors. And I think we bring that quality to our projects, and the same thing with project neighbors and their group as well. You can't walk around the College Hill neighborhood and point out their buildings necessarily. So I think that's a really important aspect to what we try to do.
Mm-hmm. Well, speaking of Hilltop or College Hill, we did talk about your project called Beverly, the acquisition you made recently and are currently rehabbing. So what's the latest update there, and when will folks be moving in?
So construction is wrapping up right now. So all the interior work is done, and we have fully leased up the building.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll have the building fully occupied on June 1st.
Wow.
So we're just doing I think the parking lot's probably being done over this weekend right now. That's the final step, and then the project's all completed and ready to go.
Nice.
But
Will
yeah,
there be with the COVID-19, will there be like a big ribbon cutting or anything like that, or can you not do that?
Yeah, so we can't do it in person, which was kind of the plan before this all happened. But we are going to do a virtual kind of open house for people. So we did some filming, you can do a little tour from the outside to the inside and see what one of our units looks like. And I think that's going to get released next week, if I'm correct. Lisa can jump in if I'm incorrect on that. But we'll release it to a group of supporters and other people that we want to show it to, and then we will release it on social media to the public as well, so you can see the new building and how great it turned out.
Yes, so please stay tuned to our social media outlets, as you will be able to see some incredible before and after photos and video of the Beverly project. It's absolutely beautiful. It's absolutely gorgeous. So we're really, really excited to bring that to the College Hill and Hilltop area and the neighborhood.
Great. I can't wait to see it. Let's see. Anything, we talked about the Michigan City housing last time. You just mentioned the workforce level housing. Beverly sounds like it's coming along great, and I can't wait to see that. What's next? What other projects are brewing?
Yeah, just a real recent news. Just last week, we got the great news that another project of ours was funded. So the state is going to give us a little over $500,000 to purchase and rehab a 6-unit building in College Hill neighborhood. So it's just kind of like a half block away from our Beverly Apartments project. And so it'll be a similar type. So, taking a building that's already existing in that neighborhood, and putting, a lot of dollars into it to, increase the green standards, the the aesthetics from the outside and inside, and then hopefully lower some rent for folks who need some affordable housing in that neighborhood. So really excited about that opportunity, and especially in that block and area too, to have we'll end up putting close to $1.5 million into one city block to improve some housing. So we're really proud of that fact and excited to get started on that project.
That's amazing. That's good to know. Let's see. So in fact, back on that neighborhood, one of the things we changed at Roots when we reopened just a few days ago was we started offering delivery services for our products. And I made a delivery yesterday on Union Street, just right in the heart of that neighborhood there. So it's good to see all kinds of people living together, and you guys in particular, like you said, bringing that higher level of quality as a responsible building owner and responsible landlord to your clients. So thanks again for all you do. I think that wraps it up for the advanced questions that we had. So hopefully we can do this again, Jordan. Keep me in mind again as a host. I would love to keep the conversations going.
Yeah, same for us. We really appreciate you working with us and joining us for these conversations. So stay tuned for the next one for sure.
Yes, absolutely. Hopefully the next one we will be able to do in person, in Roots, with a group of people that are eager to learn more about what we're doing and how we're working to resolve and prevent homelessness here in our community, Valparaiso and beyond. So we're really excited to get the momentum running on the conversation. So again, as Jordan said, thank you for being a part of it, Val.
You're welcome. Thank you. So long.
Thanks, everyone.